if you're a Lions fan, that you have to imagine that despite as expected, crappy 2021, in my opinion, there was a sense of hope for these young Detroit Lions, especially when you have a head coach in Dan Campbell, who was a no-nonsense person that really was trying to get the best out of his team. He looked like the right person to lead that Detroit Lions and lead a team that had a few pieces that could assist in that rebuild that they're trying to put together. And when you look at what they did in the offseason, trying to build around that team, it was pretty decent what they did. And they used their second overall pick to get a defensive foundation in Aiden Hutchinson. It could have done more, but I mean, hey, this things take time, I guess. So it was expected that the Lions wouldn't win too many games, not lose. Well, they would lose a lot, but it is what it is. But it was more important for them in 2022 to win more games than they did in 2021, and see who is valuable in the long-term outlook of their rebuild. They certainly got the memo on the first part. They won. They won some games. They lost some games. But they early in the season, they had some games that they easily could have won, but they ended up losing those games. And that was because of, for as good as their offense surprisingly was, their defense was one of the worst, if not the worst, in the league. Because that defense gave up a lot of big plays, a lot of yards, a lot of easily defendable plays, and just too many points left on the board for that Lions defense, especially in the secondary. And, that's not to say that, in fairness, that the offense had its problems too. The running game couldn't get going that much. Jared Goff, had some issues with detecting some receivers at times, besides Amon-Ra St. Brown. But the defense was the primary issue. They just could not stop opposing quarterbacks, especially in the passing game. And that's why, for a good portion, they started 1-6. And they easily could have said that, like most people, I was kind of one of those people that thought that the Lions should have just punted the season. They could have just laid down, sleep, like the song, "The Lions Sleep Tonight." It could have been like those same old lines. Now, some people were calling for Dan Campbell's job. Like, I don't know why. I still thought that was a little bit too rash. But Dan Campbell was like, no, we're not going to take this. We have to rally together, rally the troops, and get back on our feet. And that's exactly what the Lions did. They rallied together, and you could sense that during that second half of the season, these Lions they pretty much turned a 180. They really put together a team effort to win a good amount of their games and improve on one another. The running game got much better. They put on a balancing act of DeAndre Swift with the touchdown vulture that is Jamal Williams. Williams played pretty solid to take some of the load off of DeAndre Swift. And in turn also helped out Jared Goff, who, he didn't have to throw too much. But when Jared Goff did have to throw, he looked a little bit more poised. He also got aggressive at times when called upon. And, he didn't make too many mistakes. And he also got help in the receiving game too, late in the season, when their first round pick, Jameson Williams from Alabama, made his season debut. He fully recovered from his torn ACL in December. And it took some time to ease in, adjust to the NFL, but he got a couple of games in, and he seems like he could be a solid to good receiver for them. It's going to take some time for him to adjust, especially when he gets a full off season in, and a full season in 2023 in this fall. But in the games that he played in December, he looks pretty decent from the stretch that he had. And then defensively, they still had their issues, but they were a little bit more locked down, especially in the pass rush, when Aiden Hutchinson got a little bit more help in the defensive line. So all in all, it was a pretty big team effort for the Lions. They went 8-2 the rest of the way. And yeah, they couldn't get the last playoff spot in the NFC, but they still ended their season on a pretty big high note. When they went to Lambeau Field, played the Green Bay Packers, they had nothing to play for because they were already eliminated from playoff contention because the Seahawks had beaten the Rams earlier in the day, so they were mathematically eliminated. But they easily could have, just laid down, like the same old Lions, because of what happened earlier in the day. But they went out and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take that opportunity of spoiling the Packers winning in situation and play like we were the ones going to the playoffs. And that's exactly what the Lions did. They played in a game where they looked much better against a quarterback that has usually owned them in years past. But they were the ones that looked like they were going to punch their ticket to the postseason. Like they were the ones that had something on the line in that game against the Green Bay Packers in that last game of the season, and pretty much eliminated Green Bay from playoff contention in what was pretty much a gimme game for them. So for the Lions, this was a good way to end their season. A much better than expected season. A good second half turnaround for Detroit. That their fan base, a better way that they could have asked for. So, had they actually made it to the playoffs, I think I'm not sure if they would have won a game. Maybe against the Vikings, possibly if they were the 6th seed. But they would have given someone like the 49ers a much harder time. They might have not won, but it would have certainly given someone like the 49ers a pretty difficult time. So overall, they had a really good second 2022, 9-8. Not bad for a rebuilding team. Much better than expected. Now you're going to this offseason, which is fast approaching with free agency and the draft. And you if you're Detroit, you got to build on this. You absolutely have to build on this strong way to end another promising season. Like Dan Campbell is still one in my opinion could be one of the best coaches in the league right now if he continues to build on this. So looking at the offseason plan for the Lions, you have about $23 million at the time I'm making this in cap space. Looking at some of your key free agents, your linebackers, Alex Anzalone, I'm sorry for mispronouncing that, and Austin Bryant. One of your biggest contributors in the secondary, Deshaun Elliott at free safety, corners Mike Hughes and Amani Olajuwon. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And then offensively, DJ Clark at receiver, and probably your biggest contributor in the second half, backup running back Jamal Williams. So I imagine the biggest ones that Detroit should look at keeping is free safety Deshaun Elliott and running back Jamal Williams, because Williams at least could be a huge compliment to DeAndre Swift. And looking at some of the things that they need to address this offseason for Detroit, obviously, when you look back at their season, the defense was atrocious. So they have to commit on focusing on all defensive positions in both free agency and the draft. The first thing that they have to attack is the secondary, because, again, it was one of the worst in the league at every position. At linebacker, they need something that can rush the passer and cover the middle of the field. They need cornerbacks that can keep up with opposing receivers and create some big stops downfield, whether it's pass coverage, pass deflections, interceptions, maybe even another safety or two, especially they not able to re-sign Deshaun Elliott. Either way, they have to retool that defense big time, because if they don't, they're going to be in big trouble again in 2023. They should also consider finding a starting tight end in the draft, because midway in the season at the trade deadline, they traded their starter TJ Hawkinson to the Minnesota Vikings in a rare division trade. So they're gonna have to find his replacement. And then, looking long term for these Lions. You know, they're building something good. They're building something pretty good. But looking at the most important position of the game, which is quarterback, I think the Lions are in a pretty good spot this offseason. Not in terms of Jared Goff, because how much can you sustain with him long term? Sure, you've seen flashes of him here and there from seasons past, whether it was at the Rams or this season, the second half. But you've seen how he did in 2019, and you've seen how he did in his first season with Detroit. Like, his ceiling can be capped if he doesn't do well. So if you're Detroit, can you really believe that Jared Goff can sustain this kind of success long term? That being said, they're in a pretty good position to get a young quarterback if it wanted to with the 6th overall pick. Maybe they can go trade at least 1 or 2, 3 spots up in the draft. Just keep in mind though, like 3 teams are going to be picking a quarterback though, because you have the Panthers now at number 1 after they traded a boatload of picks and DJ Moore to the Bears. You have the Houston Texans. You have the Indianapolis Colts. You never know. Also, who else wants to trade up to get one of the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft? So maybe if the Lions are lucky enough, if the right quarterback sits in their hands, maybe they should consider taking it. Either way, it's something for Detroit to think about in the next month or two. So overall, the Lions were not expected to do all that well this past season in 2022, but they absolutely countered those expectations with a good second half turnaround, a strong end to the season in Green Bay, eliminating their division rivals from playoff contention on the very last game. And I think if they focus on fixing their defense at all positions and consider getting a young quarterback in the spot they're in at number 6 overall, or maybe even consider trading up if they wanted to. I don't think that's the most feasible move, but if the cards fall right, the Lions can put themselves in serious position on not just making the playoffs finally in 2023, but with the way the NFC North is shaping up to be, they could seriously have a shot at competing for the division title this coming fall. Like, I'm dead ass serious.